What I'm going to talk about today is some generative AI models in stable diffusion. Now, if you're like me, you go looking around to see what are the popular ones and which ones have higher ratings. But every time I look on the web and see them, they're all text-based. They aren't really showing you what it looks like in the real world. So today we're going to take a look at output from these set here, Cyber Realistic version 33, Dreamlike Photoreal 2.0 Checkpoint, and the Dreamlike Photoreal 2.0 Safe Tensors to give you an idea between the difference between a checkpoint and a safe tensor. We're also going to look at Epic Realism. Then we're going to look at HenMix, Realistic Vision, Reliberate version 10, and then version 20. So these are all current models that are available. And to make it as simple as possible, I went with a very simple prompt, as you can see here. Full body portrait, some LoRa settings, highly detailed skin texture, and skin pores. Photorealistic, one woman with long dark hair wearing a closed ceremonial robe in the woods, centered in the frame. Again, full body photograph, f2.0 with a 50mm lens. You'll notice below I put low res, bad anatomy, monochrome, grayscale, watermark, deformed, disfigured, text, extra limbs, naked or exposed breasts as the negative prompt on it. Doing this for YouTube, and there's certain things that obviously I can't show here. So we're going to take a look over here at the sampling method. I used a DPM adaptive, 40 steps. I was doing a 704 by a 960, restoring the faces, 2 at a time, and I'll explain why as we go through the pictures. Gave it a 0.23 variation, left both seeds the same, -1, meaning that it's going to just go through and generate a random each time in stable diffusion. Now, the reason I have set this up with a batch count of 2 is if you run these models with a prompt and just use it once, the difference between your first and your second, there might be some issues with one or the other that might not be in the other copy. So by giving it 2, I usually do 5, but even doing 2 here with this whole setup took me over a day and a half. So, and again, I'm not going to talk about how the speed of these models are. We're just going to talk about the images themselves. So let's take a look at our first one here. Cyber Realistic. And it's obvious what's wrong in this first picture. Not only do we have the 3 hands, we have 3 feet. And the feet are weird looking. So this, while the robe is gorgeous, obviously is a failure for trying to use it. But if we take a look at the next one, again, out of Cyber Realistic, look at what we got. The feet still look a little odd on that one foot, but the robe is beautiful. The hands, we got 4 fingers and a hidden thumb, 4 fingers and a hidden thumb. There's a bump here that's kind of weird. Now, again, if you do any photo editing at all, you can clean up some of this stuff. But this came out fairly well. But I want you to take a look at the face, okay? The faces between the two are different. So let's move on to Dreamlike Photoreal. Now, again, remember I said this was a full body photograph, which the other one did, and I said it was a closed robe. Neither of those are showing up in this image. The hair looks great. The face looks great. You can't see the hands. Got some definition in the body itself. And you can barely make out that there's a robe in this one. In the second copy, the hand is wrong here. The hair looks weird. But again, this was just a batch of 2. So it had the same issues that the first one did as far as not having a closed robe. Now, when we use the safe tensor version of it, not unsurprisingly, we get the same type of image. And again, another one with the hair in the face just doesn't seem to blend well. And all 4 of the dreamlike ones are open robe. Now, dreamlike has a tendency to get a little thirst trap in the way they generate the images. But one thing I noticed, it's interesting to see what does and does not get ignored in the prompts. So let's move on to epic realism. Now, I hadn't used this one before, so let's take a good look here. All right, the robe is not smooth. It has patterns to it as if it were put in a drawer and put out to be worn. We still have an issue with feet. The thumbs look okay. The hands look okay. Decent looking robe. While the robe isn't closed, she is clothed. But again, closed robe, not so much. Oh, and again, looking at the faces from back here, it's almost the same face in every single one of the ones in Dreamlike Photoreal. So let's go back to Epic. Second one in Epic. So we'll do the faces here. The faces are a little different, so there is some variation in the face. Certain features of the face are very similar from one to the other. Again, open robe, but she's clothed. The feet look much better here than they did in the other one. Looks like she's wearing sandals here instead of being barefoot. Again, the robe looks, every part of her outfit looks like it had been put away and taken out. It doesn't look like it had just come from being pressed. So it looks much more realistic. And I'm not paying attention to the backgrounds for this because the backgrounds to me were a side thing, other than the fact that every one of them had the proper blur to the image. All right, this is hen mix. Now, one thing I found interesting with the hen mix, both of these images have the same piece to it, and that is, take a look at this. I said centered in frame. It took it to mean that there was a frame around the image, which I thought was interesting, that that's the way it interpreted that part of the definition. Again, not an open robe, but she is clothed. Kind of an Asian style to the face, and by Asian I mean more around Japan area of the world. Fingers look okay on this hand, but look at this hand. Does not look right there. The foot looks awkward, but reasonable. So look at the next one for Hen Mix Real, version 40. Again, centered in frame. Again, a hand that looks a little odd. Not with a closed robe, but again, she's clothed. It added a necklace, which was a nice touch. Face is different than the other one, and a little bit different nationality. Not fully in frame. You can see that it's cut off here at the bottom, which I found interesting. But in both of these, there is variation between the colors, etc. So it made a nice change from one to the other. That's, again, another reason why I wanted to do multiple ones. You can always reuse the seed. And another important thing to do every time that you do these things, and I've talked about this before in generative AI, is make sure that the image stores your settings along with the image itself. Because not only will it tell you the settings that you got, your prompts that you used, it'll tell you the steps, it'll tell you the samplers, it'll tell you the scales, it'll tell you what seed was used, the sizes, and more importantly, the model and the model hash. Now, why is the hash important? If a model updates, its hash changes. So this way you'll be able to see what was used, and it also includes the LoRa hashes for the ones that were used in this image. So anytime you go back and you see an image that you want to recreate, you can go and grab this information and try to recreate that image. Now we're done with the hen mix ones. We're going to move on to another one called realistic vision. Okay, we have a woman in the forest. In this case, the trees don't drop off quite as much. They aren't quite as blurred as they are in the other ones. With the f2.0 that I specified in the prompt, there should have been much more drop off. That's okay. You'll notice the face is very similar. The faces that seem to be generated basically are based off of what they used to prime their models. So the hands, this one looks odd. Pretty robe, it is closed. And other than the hands, it's a good image. Although the hair does look a little pixelated, probably because I zoomed in so much. But again, the trees look a little bit more in focus. We go back here, they're a little in focus there and a little more in focus there. I guess I have to go back to the dream-like ones before we really see the fade off that should have happened with the camera angles. So I apologize. I thought they were all faded off, but they were not. Most of them ignored the camera setting. So the second realistic, the robe is not closed. Face has very similar features to it. Hair covering over the breast, so it did take the naked breast bit out, but the fingers look a little odd, and the robe is definitely not closed. It's also not a full portrait. It's cut off, and it also ignored the lens setting that I had. And this will bring us up to Reliberate version 10. So again, ignore the camera setting. We have an odd hand here like we did back with Epic Realism, so there's probably a basis, a similarity in the two. The robe is closed. The hair looks good. The face looks good. Now, bear in mind, I did not set up an age for this. All right, so it could have picked any age it wanted. One foot is missing a toe, and the other foot looks a little odd. She's barefoot, which is fine. I did not specify any kind of footwear. The other version 10, you'll notice, is almost identical in robe. I have no idea what's going on down here with the foot. That just looks kind of weird and creepy. The hand's okay because the thumb's missing here, but this hand looks a little weird right there. But it is a closed robe, so it did match that part of the prompt. Now, Reliberate version 20. This is not a closed robe, and she is naked underneath the robe. Now, I did do another set before where I actually had to specify a bodysuit with Reliberate before I got a safe for YouTube image out of it. So here I had to edit this one. She has a necklace, which is a nice touch, but I would rather it had matched my prompt. I don't know what this is on her finger. The hand kind of looks okay on this side, if we assume that the thumb is hidden underneath. The feet look a little blurred, and I kind of wonder if they did any pictures with just feet. That always had the foot covered, and that's why we're not getting a good foot out of here. The face looks good. The hair looks good. But then on its second one, it gave me another different face, which is good. This could be all the robe, but I believe the robe is the gold part here, and she's got a centerpiece, so she is covered. You'll notice that you can't see the feet in this particular one, and the hands are here, which I find interesting because to me, if we compare the two, it's very different what we got from the same prompt in the same batch. Okay, so let's take a look at these in pairs. So again, this was the cyber realistic versions. This is the first set of the dreamlike photoreal, which if I put all four of them up, you're going to notice that there's no real difference between the checkpoint and the safe tensor. And that was a question that I had. Is there a difference between the two? The sizes of the files are the same. They come in at 1.98 gigabytes. So I expected similar results, but I just wanted to check because I'd never done a test between safe tensor and checkpoint before. Of all of the models, the HenMix comes in at 2.9 gigabytes, but the Realistic Vision is the biggest one at 3.97. Okay. This pair here is the Epic Realism one. Very similar color setup. The faces are also very similar. Going to the HenMix ones. The face has a difference between the two. The outfits are very different. And like some of the other ones, it doesn't have the closed robe that I had specifically put in the prompt. And again, it was the Reliberate version 10 that violated the negative prompts and made it an unsafe image. This one came very close to it. This is the Realistic Vision set, and it came very close to violating the negative, although it did see the negative said no exposed breasts, so it took that out. Face is similar as far as the structure of the nose, but other than that, a nice change to the face and a good outfit, at least in one of the two images. And again, we'll go down here to our final pair for Reliberate version 10. Very similar robe colors, very similar faces. It's almost like a change in age as opposed to a different structure to the face. So that's what I got for you this week. One of the things that was frustrating to me when I saw these images or this list on the web was it talking specifically about the image, but not really, it was recommending these things, but not showing you what you would get out of them. Now I have a much larger set of prompts that I'll try these on later. But for right now, I wanted something simple that we could just talk about. Again, these are the versions that we just discussed. Cyber realistic, dreamlike photoreal, epic realism, natural sin RC1 VAE, NMEX Real version 40, realistic vision version 5.1, Reliberate version 10, and Reliberate version 20. Now I had the 10 already. The 10 was the very thirsty one, and I wanted to try out 20 to see if there was any difference between that. This is that simple prompt that we used. Didn't really give it much, just wanted some detailed skin. One woman with long dark hair wearing a closed ceremonial robe in the woods. And this is the part that got violated on most of them was it ignored the f2.0 50 millimeter lens. You can go to one of my other videos where I talk about the f, but basically what happens is the smaller that number, the less of the image is going to be in focus. And if you've seen an image of a person with everything in the background just completely blurred out, that is a high F. From your perspective, it would be a low number. From my perspective, it's a high F. It's the focal length of the lens divided by. So f2.0 is a 50 millimeter divided by 2. So the smaller that F number, the larger it comes out to be. But in this case, we should have seen, and we didn't, except for one image, that the f2.0 with a 50 millimeter lens was being honored. Negatives are, I've found to be very important, and I've also seen them get overridden, especially when it comes to text. And again, one of the issue, of course, with all generative is what were the images that these were based upon. If it was based upon things that people put out there on the free sites, that's all free territory. If it was stuff that people put together for sale, that's another issue entirely. And even on the free sites, probably would have been good to see something that delineated that they were going to be used for other things. And that's one thing that I do when I take pictures is I've retooled my contract so that the shoot itself is one contract. The usage of the images is a separate contract, and that contract does spell out the generative AI usage that's in there. The thing I see with an issue with generative AI is, as you saw all these images, any one of these images you can swap out the face very easily in generative AI. So having an image of somebody's face, you could use it in all of these images. Now, what I did early on was kick it off. I think I started out with dreamlike photoreal, and I just told it to give me 5 blondes, 5 brunettes, and 5 redheads, and let it generate what it was going to do for the faces. Then I use those faces if I want to have a consistent face in a photograph. So that's what I used. it for, and that's where I replace my faces from. But in theory, you could take somebody's face and put it on anything. So it's very important that that's spelled out in contracts. Otherwise, I can see a lot of litigation coming forward from these things. But again, just wanted to give you guys a look at these different models. If I come up with something that does a cooler version, or if you guys have something you'd like me to put together that would be safe to be shown on YouTube, let me know. Bearing in mind that even boudoir photography is tough to get posted sometimes. But that's what I got for you this week, and I will talk to you guys all next week.